Okay, thanks everyone for being here today. My name is Emma Bleesner. I'm the chair of House District 4. So just so folks know, this is a hybrid meeting, so we appreciate you bearing with us through any technical difficulties. We do have folks on Zoom and we are live streaming this to YouTube. It was really important to all the officers to make this as accessible and transparent as possible. So thank you all so much for being here. We will get started with the forum portion. And first, I will kick it over to Micaela Ironshell to do a land acknowledgement.
How matakiapi. My name is Micaela Ironshell Dominguez, born and raised here in what we now call Denver, Colorado. Very honored to be here with you all this evening. I grew up right down the street from here, born and raised in the North Side. And my mother actually graduated from Regis University with her nursing degree. So very, very honored to be here today. I want us to all take a moment and honor the stolen land we are all on at this present moment. Here in what we now call Denver, Colorado, it's a sacred land of the Arapaho, Ute, the Cheyenne, and 4 other tribes, including my very own, the Chichangalokota. I ask that you join me in acknowledging my people, our elders, and future generations. I want us to not forget that the culture today was founded upon exclusions and erasures of my people. I want to continue by saying a land acknowledgement serves as an important reminder and represents the first step in remembering that this land isn't ours, that our government committed genocide to build the country we have now, and that we have a role to play in reconciliation right now. The thing is, too many are just doing land acknowledgements and then patting themselves on the back. And land acknowledgement is the bare minimum. Unless it's paired with meaningful and ongoing solidarity, it's just one performative colonial crop. Unless you are truly committed to ongoing solidarity, voting in solidarity, doing business in solidarity, living in solidarity, showing up in solidarity with us Indigenous people. It doesn't matter if you have a great land acknowledgement or not. What's important to remember here is that colonialism has not ended. While you may think a land acknowledgement, is solely for reflecting on the historical significance of colonialization, this viewpoint erases the current and ongoing colonial violence that is happening today. Rather than thinking of Indigenous peoples as relics of our past life, we must recognize that we are still thriving in our communities as business owners, athletes, scholars, and advocates for social and environmental change. And that our very existence today is in direct defiance of what colonial powers aimed and aims to accomplish. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Reyes. I am the chair of the Democratic Party of Denver. I wanted to welcome everyone today. Thank you for being here. I first wanted to say one little thing about this. I think it's important for us in this room to acknowledge that what we're doing falls a little short of actual democracy. That's not to disparage the work we're doing, but I think it's important to acknowledge that. The people of this district generally don't have a say in who their next state representative is. The 70 members of this vacancy committee do. There are 77,000 people in House District 4. There are 70 people voting in this vacancy committee. Each member of this vacancy committee then bears the weight of voting for 1,100 people. And so my hope is that as you vote today, you take that seriously and consider the weight of the responsibility that you have in voting today. I do want to thank the candidates who stood up to run for this vacancy committee. I know all 3 of them. I know all 3 of them to be hardworking people. And I am grateful that they stood up in the spirit of public service to do this work. They, of course, will be fulfilling the term that the former state representative, Serena Gonazales-Gutierrez, who now serves proudly on city council, has left. And I do want to thank Representative Gonzalez-Gutierrez for her service. A lot of work went into putting this event together. First of all, I'm grateful to the Regis team for making this happen. I do want to thank especially the leaders of the House District 4 Central Committee for their work. I especially want to thank two people, Emma Belisner and Scott Mangino, Chair and Secretary. Emma's here. Where's Scott? Over there. I do want to thank them for the countless hours that went into doing this. One thing that's been important for me as county chair is to document processes, and they've done an amazing job in setting up what I believe is a really good template for any future vacancy committees that we will have in Denver in the future. Very well documented processes, steps, tasks, lists, et cetera, et cetera. They've done an amazing job and put so much time, and I know there's a lot of frayed nerves from both of their parts when it came to getting this event put together. So I want to thank them. I do also want to acknowledge Mike Sheehan, who is the vice chair of the House District. Now, Mike is an interesting predicament because he is married to one of the candidates. And Mike, of course, but Mike himself, not being asked, told everybody on the committee that he would step back, recognizing that conflict of interest, and not help with the planning itself, though he's been very eager to take assigned tasks, which he'll be our timekeeper tonight. So I do want to thank Mike for his contributions here. I also want to thank the rest of the team that has helped out. So with this, Leah Dean, who is the first vice chair of the county party, her husband Cassidy Dean, who's here as well. He has been helping. Megan Stevens, who works in our office, the Denver Dems office, did a lot of work as well, helping book the venue, getting everything together for this. I'm also going to recognize my husband, Julius Garrido, over here, who's a photographer and decided to help. He's a really good photographer, by the way, if you ever have a need. I do want to thank our donors. This venue was a little expensive, but we thought that was important to have a space that could open this up to the public. Again, going back to my first comment about this not being the most democratic process. So given the circumstance that we're in, what's the best we can do with what the law tells us we have to do? Let's be open and transparent. Let's allow the public to come in and see the room. And I see folks in the back who are not members of the committee who've decided to join us today. I want to thank you for coming. And of course, I want to thank members of the Vacancy Committee themselves, who are mostly the precinct organizers and a couple of other officials who by statute make up the Vacancy Committee. Thank you for coming. And also to our folks online. As Emma mentioned, this is a hybrid meeting. So we do have folks participating online. And I want to thank all of you for doing your civic duty as officers of the party and helping to make this happen. Thank you. Couple more thank yous really quickly. I want to thank our credentials committee who are sitting in an office down the hall. Mary Geisinger, who's the chair of the county vacancy committee, who's serving as chair of, the credentials committee, who's serving as chair of the credentials committee for this meeting. Elliot Lewis, vice chair of the credentials committee, and Mark Hammond, the former county chair, who's also serving on the credentials committee. They will be counting the votes, making sure that only qualified electors' votes are counted. And each of the candidates have assigned a representative of theirs to sit in the room and observe the counting to ensure there's accountability in that effort. So I want to thank the Credentials Committee for their work. I also we will be starting a forum here in a second, and I want to thank a few people who have stepped up to help with that. I want to thank former Representative and now Councilwoman Serena Gonazales-Gutierrez for chairing that effort and helping us field questions for that for the forum. I also want to thank City Council President Jamie Torres, Councilwoman Amanda Sandoval, and one of our co-captains in House District 4, Josh Rosenblum. Thank you for your work in helping to prepare for the forum this afternoon. And finally, I just want to acknowledge the rest of the elected officials that I see in the room I've not already mentioned. I see DPS Board President Xochitl Gaitan. I see DPS Vice President Ayante Anderson. And I see RTD Director Michael Guzman. Also State Representative Javier Mabry, who is here. State Representative Elizabeth Epps. Senator Julie Gonzalez. And I believe Charmaine Lindsay is here, right? Where? Okay, there you go. I hope I didn't miss anybody.
He said.
Oh yeah, we definitely mentioned them as the forum members, forum committee. Well, that's all I got. Thank you so much again, and I'll give it back to the House District Chair to move us along. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, James. Now we will get started with the forum portion. So I'm just going to pass it to Councilwoman Gonzalez-Gutierrez.
Good, I guess afternoon. I keep hearing everybody say, oh, that happened earlier. Okay. I have a mic right here. Yeah. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. So good afternoon. I hear everybody keep saying good evening, but I look outside and I think we're still in the daytime. Maybe it just feels like we're in the evening already. Well, my name is Serena Gonazales-Gutierrez, and I've had the honor of serving as your state representative here in House District 4 for the last 5 years. Thank you. I'm incredibly proud of the candidates that have stepped up to run for this vacancy. Super, super proud because House District 4 has historically been a Latino seat. And I am so grateful that we have 3 amazing candidates that were willing to go through this process. So thank you. Give them a round of applause. And like James, I know each of them as well. And you know, we couldn't ask for a better choices here today. I'm proud to have been a part of the positive changes made during my tenure and know that there is way more work to be done at the legislature and for the state of Colorado. I have full faith in my colleagues who I see in the crowd here today, and the future House District 4 representative, that I hope you will pass policies that prioritize the Coloradans who don't have the loudest voices. But those are the ones that are closest to the pain. Those who are most impacted and are not privileged to have paid corporate lobbyists at the Capitol. I trust that they will continue to work on policies so that Coloradans can access affordable housing and healthcare, and that people who are housed can keep their housing. And those that are unhoused, struggling with substance use or mental health issues are treated with dignity and support. What I am asking for my colleagues going forward, both incoming and current, I'm asking you to continue the work to break down these oppressive systems that continue to disproportionately prosecute, incarcerate, and create barriers for adults and children of color to thrive right here in our state. Thank you. As I have often done over the past 5 years, I leave reminding the residents of House District 4, my former colleagues, folks coming in, you're there to represent the people and not special interests. So I am so honored today to be able to be a part of this. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that James went over a minute ago. So the House District 4 officers wanted to put together this forum in order to allow voting members and members of the public the opportunity to hear from the candidates and ask questions. This is, I think, the first time that we are doing a forum as part of a vacancy. Is that correct? Maybe. At least in our lifetime, maybe. I don't know. At least in Denver. So we are going to, when we kick things off, so I'm going to go over some of the basic rules for the forum today. And I know the candidates should have all been briefed on this as well. But we will begin with candidate introductions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. We will then move to 3 pre-submitted community questions. Candidates will have 2 minutes to answer each of those questions. These questions were submitted by community members and selected by a committee of non-voting members, which included myself, Council President Torres, Council President Pro Tem Sandoval, as well as DPOD officers James Reyes and Josh Rosenblum. And as he is an HD4 officer, but he is not a voting member of the Vacancy Committee. So I want to thank you all again for taking the time that you did in order to look at the questions and really figure out, what are the things that we hope, our voters want to hear. We will then move to questions from members of the audience. We'll have folks raise your hand and somebody will come to you, I believe. Are we going to go to them? Okay. When you ask your questions, please identify yourself with your name and your precinct. And if you are a PO or the precinct that you are a PO of. Candidates will have 2 minutes to answer those questions. So it will be 3 questions from the audience. We hope that if we get one from Zoom, we can take one from Zoom and then 2 from the live audience here is the plan. We'll then move into 1 minute wrap up by all of the candidates. We have, as we heard, the amazing Michael Sheehan over here ready to be our timer. So we're going to go over what the colors mean. Yellow means that you have 30 seconds left, and red means stop. Please, please, please do not go over your time so that we can get to the Vacancy Committee meeting on time. With that said, we kind of touched base ahead of time, and Michael is going to flicker red. If you see that light flickering, please just wrap it up. I will interject and I will ask you to wrap it up if you have not at that time. Okay. So to get us started, I'm going to ask Scott Mangino to pull some names from this beautiful hat for the order of the candidates. And then we are going to rotate with this first candidate there going forward.
Oh, why are they stuck together? Rochelle Galindo. Number 2. Tim Hernandez. And then number 3. Don't know who she's going to be. Cecilia Espinoza.
Great. I should mention as well that our other councilwomen that are here, and so both President Torres and Pro Tem Sandoval, their districts overlap with the House District 4, which is the importance of why they're here with us today, representing District 1 and District 3 in City Council. And so they'll be also assisting with asking a few of the questions. We're going to use this microphone for Tim and Cecilia, or Miss Espinosa and Mr. Hernandez. Should I be formal? Okay. All right, so I think we can get started. We'll start with your brief introduction, and each candidate gets 2 minutes, and we will begin with Rochelle Galindo.
Hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay, awesome. Hello, my name is Rochelle Galindo and I use she, her pronouns. and I was born and raised in the very conservative, segregated area of Greeley, Colorado. My passion for engaging in the Colorado community began when I became a field organizer for President Obama's re-election campaign in 2012. That's where I learned to engage community and get people engaged in the political process. In 2013, I stayed involved and worked on a local mayoral race. And in 2014, I helped run that then State Representative Dave Young's re-election campaign. And in 2015, my senior year at CSU, I had done so much work in the community and I had built so many relationships. I figured it was time for me to run for office myself. So I became the first openly gay elected official to the Greeley City Council. Where I gave the most underrepresented a voice at the city of Greeley. And I decided to expand my leadership in 2018 and I ran for the State House District 50, where I became not only the first openly gay elected, but the first person of color elected to a state office from Weld County. Do I pass this down?
No, you can leave that one.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Rochelle Galindo, everybody. All right, next up is Tim Hernandez.
Can y'all hear me? Yeah. Orale. Oh. Ready to go, Mike? Okay, hold up. I got a timer too, because I'm a teacher. If you give a teacher a microphone, it's gonna be bad for everybody.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tim Hernandez. I'm a teacher. I'm a Chicano, and I'm a North Sider. I'm from right here in this neighborhood on 38th and Irving. And I love being from this place. This is the most beautiful neighborhood in the world to me. But statistically, that means that a poor brown kid like me is not supposed to be here. I never envisioned myself being here. I was a kid that waited tables at Javier's Diner, saving my pennies so I could be the first person in my birth family to get a college degree. And then I did. I'm running now because of my lived experience with the struggles in our community and because I have watched as a teacher, my students living through the exact same struggles now. As a young person, I faced housing instability. I went to 7 schools in 7 years. And as a teacher, during the pandemic, I watched students face housing instability to the point that I had students doing my class from bathtubs. I was a member of an educational generation in Colorado that never received a fully funded day of education. And as a teacher now, I have to make Amazon wish lists so that I can get class sets of books to my students. As a kid, I waited in schools, afraid to die because adults would not be bold enough on gun violence. Now I am the adult in the room with kids, afraid to die because adults won't be bold enough on gun violence. Look, I think it's essential that we have to live our experience to practice our democratic values. That's why I went and interned with Senator Chuck Schumer. I went from protesting Donald Trump to helping prosecute the office that was seeking to remove him for president. I've knocked thousands of doors across the state for Democrats. I've testified on legislation at the state capitol in this session on education and housing bills. And I serve as a current HD4A captain for our Democratic Party. Look, I think that it's time for the next generation to lead on our democratic values from a place of lived experiences with the struggles of our community. Because the people who are most impacted are the best equipped to lead the fight for change. I know from listening to my students, I know from listening to all of you that we together hold the experiences to fight for change and win.
You need to wrap it up. Thank you. Next, that was Tim Hernandez. Now we have Cecilia Espinosa.
Being a former professor, I also have a time issue, but I am Cecilia Espinoza. I'm here to fill this vacancy because I am a public servant who believes in servant leadership. It has never been about me, and this is too large a community need, filling a one-year seat in the legislature as your representative. My mother, an 8th generation Coloradan, was born in Pueblo. My father was born in Greeley. When my grandfather died tending sheep on the Wyoming mountainside, my dad moved to Pueblo and was raised by his uncle, who was a migrant farm worker himself. Both families were migrant farm workers, in fact, in the beet fields. They dropped out of the migrant stream in Utah, and that's where I was born and raised. I was born 2 months early, premature, and not given a chance of surviving, but I beat the odds, which is something I have done my entire life. Our family's economic life was uneven, and we moved from poverty into better times. And sometimes we were on food stamps, but we had 2 principles: education matters, and we always help those less fortunate. High school dropouts themselves, my parents prioritized education, and their belief in the promise of a better life through education led me to be the first in my family to attend college, the second Latina lawyer in the whole state of Utah, the first Latina law professor at the University of Denver, and the first Mexican-American to serve as a federal appellate immigration judge. Serving those less fortunate in my family meant making room for people at our table and in our home. It means housing family to prevent homelessness, taking in clients who haven't got job authorization yet, and doing pro bono work. It meant when I earned a place at the table where prior generations have been excluded, I remembered the less fortunate and made sure that even when I was the first, I wouldn't be the last. I have worked inside the system as a public attorney, and I ask your vote so that I can work inside the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Those are great intros. So we're going to now go into the pre-submitted questions. I want to just make one minor correction. We have 3 pre-submitted questions and a bonus question. And it's okay, candidates. It's a fun one. It's a fun one. We got to lighten it up a little bit here. So to kick us off, I'm going to pass this to Council President Torres.
Thank you very much. Candidates, how do your priorities align with the Democratic Party of Denver's priorities? And how do you utilize or take on lobbyists and special interests in order to advance these priorities?
And we are going to start with Tim Hernandez.
I appreciate a question about the democratic values that we share. We're Democrats here. That's why we're here, why we hope to act upon our principles and our values. I'm here because I'm in line with the Democratic Party of Denver's values, right? I'm a teacher, a public school teacher, a CEA union member, and a proud member of the largest union in Colorado. And that means that I'm also in line with DPOD's work on unions. Right? As Democrats, we believe in protecting collective bargaining. It means that we believe in fighting for higher wages. And it means that for folks that don't have collective bargaining, we work for workplace protections. But as a teacher in a public school, it also means that I'm in line with the Democratic Party of Denver's value that I'm against corporatized charters. I am, right? That's why I'm against corporatized charters in education. Corporatized charters in education are what create decreases in student enrollment and are the reason why Fairview Elementary in HD4 closed. It is specifically because of the Democratic Party's values of guaranteeing housing to the unhoused. In case you don't know, in the last 5 years, our unhoused population in Denver has increased by 300%. We need the solution is housing, and the Democratic Party of Denver has already said that. I also align with the Democratic Party of Denver in reducing incarceration. I think that reducing incarceration will create more opportunities for safety in our community that offer wraparound services, offer integration into community via community-oriented integration programs like at Servicio de la Raza and HD4 as well, right? And I'm also very deeply committed to making sure that we can prioritize mental health access, addiction services, making sure that we enshrine the right to abortion, gender-affirming care, and mental health care all within a comprehensive single-payer system. I'm a very proud Democrat. I'm a very proud Democrat, and I'm also a progressive Democrat, which means that I push us on our values because the Democratic Party has always been pushed on its values. That is how we have grown. It is why we will continue to win elections in the future, and I'm very excited to do that work in the state legislature.
Thank you, Tim. I can repeat the question just to make sure because I know you're good? Okay, Cecilia.
The second part of that question had to do with lobbyists. And let me tell you, the reason I'm running for the seat in HD4 is that I believe the primary job is to represent you, the citizens of HD4. So I will not be swayed by lobbyists. I will not be led by lobbyists, but I will be informed by lobbyists. What I have learned is sometimes the best researchers are the ones that can give you the answers. They're the ones that can help advance our policies to ensure our communities get ahead. That's the way I'll deal with lobbyists. However, I also want to turn to the Democratic Party values. The values right now is a 2-page document of the platform. I helped write those values. I brought together the diverse segments of the Democratic Party, from the DSA to the most conservative member. We actually have a couple in the Democratic Denver Party. We all got together because they were elected, just like you're elected. They were elected to represent the whole of Denver County in drafting this platform. We had knockdown, drag out fights, but we also formed a mechanism so everybody had a voice. That's the primary value of the Democratic Party. Democracy is about collaboration. It's about listening. It is about ensuring that all voices are heard. And we are a big tent party. There are 11 principles in this platform, but there's also an overarching principle of the principle of justice and equality for all, and the fundamental desire to ensure that democracy is preserved and saved. We are in a crisis time today. Democracy requires collaboration. Democracy requires that we listen to and we understand when we are having someone oppose us. President Obama recently said that the democracy, the fundamental part of it is that we have to have democracy only when we can listen to the people who we disagree with. I was raised in Utah as a Democrat, so I grew up learning that I was in the minority, not only for being Latina, but also for being non-Mormon, also for not meeting so many of their stereotypes. But what I know is democracy works, and this process works when you all step up. And I know that what's important in the heart of the Democratic Party values is what we list in our platform. It was an amazing process for me to work with that diverse group of people to create this process. I'm proud of what we've done. I encourage all of you to read it. It speaks to values. That's what we do, and that's who we are. Thank you.
It did, but the yellow was still on, so it was like offsetting it. So sorry. You're good. Next up is Rochelle Galindo. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, to answer the question, my values are Denver's values: social, economic, immigrant, and climate justice are the reason why I chose West Denver as my home after bigoted attacks against me came to light, and I chose West Denver as my home so I can be and it's been a place that's accepted me as my whole self, and I have a proven track record of standing up to corporate lobbyists, which is why they came for me 4 years ago. I stood up for our planet and her people above the special interests in the corporate lobbyists under that golden dome. And I'm the only person here with a proven track record of being effective, being a bold, effective leader for the state of Colorado and getting actual things done for our people.
Great. Next, I'm up. Yeah, that's right. She's tracking me. Sorry about that. All right. Your next question I'm going to ask. Why did you decide to run to fill this vacancy? And while you've been running, what have you heard as the priorities of House District 4 residents? And we will start with Rochelle Galindo.
I'm running for the HD4 vacancy to continue the work that I started in the legislature and to rattle the systems of repression that continue to hold people down. And I think the biggest problem facing HD4 residents that I've heard is definitely the cost of living and the concern for displacement. Which is why my record at the legislature, I passed the local wage option bill that allowed the city of Denver to increase the minimum wage, putting more money into people's pockets to address that very problem and issue that people are facing today.
Great, thank you. Give it up for Rochelle. Next, we will go to Tim Hernandez, and I just want to say that I kind of messed up on the order there. So the next round, it will start with Cecilia. So next we'll go to Tim Hernandez. Yes. Why did you decide to run to fill this vacancy? And while you've been running, what have you heard as the priorities of House District 4 residents?
You know, I appreciated the note about a vacancy and a democratic process at the very beginning. I'm running for the vacancy because part of our job as leaders in the HD4 Dems, Cecilia and I, was to build this bench as wide as possible. Right? I don't necessarily view this as a completely democratic process, but the way we make it democratic is we bring as many people from the community here with the actual political power. Don't just build a bench. We have to build a table that people can have action and agency and autonomy to influence. Right. I'm very deeply committed to this neighborhood. I grew up here. And I think as I've been campaigning, I've met with almost every single one of the voting members. I appreciate your time throughout the summer. Thank you. Shout out to Teacher Summer Vacations. But what comes up from folks is first and foremost the housing issue. Folks are concerned about the cost of living for rents and for property taxes. There's a lot of moving pieces that go into it. So let me just say my approach to housing. We do need density. We need more housing. There are 1,500 people sleeping on the streets of Denver right now, 30 of whom have died since July 17th and the mayor took office. We need to increase our density to put people in housing first. It's important that they are built according to the ways that will prevent displacement in our community. We need things like inclusionary zoning. Every new development needs to have a certain threshold that's affordable housing and remains affordable housing. The way that we get there permanently is investing in things like community land trusts. Those are conversations I had with folks who are involved with DHA, folks who are involved in making sure that we keep our neighbors housed. Folks in our community brought up education because they are teachers in schools at charterized networks that just consolidated, and they are experiencing a difficult workplace transition. Students are experiencing a difficult educational transition, and both of those schools are still underfunded. The budget stabilization factor was $330 million over the last 20 years. Last year was bought down by the state legislature by $150 million. We still have $180 million to go to make sure students like mine that are in the crowd today go to fully funded schools.
Thank you, Tim. Next, we will go to Cecilia.
I'm running because I have served this community for 6 years in HD4 leadership. I have worked on the west side, coordinating the 18 precincts that used to run from 26th to basically Morrison Road and now run from 29th to Ohio Street. We've included now the Asian Center in our neighborhood. I've worked in the Sun Valley community for all of those years. I've seen it be demolished and disappeared, but it's coming back. I've met and I have now precinct organizers from Sun Valley, which to Tim's point is been one of the best parts of this process to fill our vacant precinct organizer positions. I would say you are representative just as I would be a representative if I'm elected to this position, because I'm going to be representing all of those voices, that the 79,000 people that live here in Denver, just like you're each representing 11,000 people now today with your vote. So it's a democratic process. When I was talking with people, a lot of people did raise education, but what they said to me is, we recognize education as a local issue. What can you do? I said, at the state level, I can do two things. I can ensure that accountability is had for our educational principles, and I can ensure that we increase the funding to the greatest extent possible. Those are the two things that I can do and that I will do. I then learned from a labor person that I can do one more thing. That is, I can work to ensure that all teachers have the rights to unionize. And that is something I will fight for in the legislature. I also learned about housing, but I didn't just learn about our renters who need to have safe, affordable housing and rights and protections for them to ensure that there's habitability. I learned about the widows who are losing their Social Security income because they're half of their Social Security income because their husbands died, who are facing taxes that are pushing them out of their community. We need to do things to ensure that all of our housed people stay housed and all of our underhoused people obtain housing. These are the issues that the people care about. These are the issues I care about. But most importantly, I guess I'll talk about that later.
Next, I'm going to invite Council President Pro Tem Amanda Sandoval to ask the next question.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. Can you tell us one or two leaders who inspire you and got you to want to run for this vacancy?
Great, thank you. We will start with Cecilia Espinosa.
Today is the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. So of course, we have to recognize Martin Luther King, who was a leader, who was someone that I heard of and knew when I was a child. I also been influenced in my life by several presidents, met several presidents actually, had the opportunity to go to the White House when I worked in Washington, DC. But I think locally, I've been influenced by the leaders who sit in their neighborhoods and actually do the work. Precinct organizers who fight for a bathhouse in the Berkeley neighborhood. I've seen people in the housing areas of the city who are fighting against zoning laws that are unjust. Those are the leaders that inspired me to run for this office. Those are the leaders that I will serve. And then final set of leaders, I guess, would be the students that I've taught over my years. Students who have gone on to be president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, students who have gone on to run for office themselves. They are the people that inspire me. The young people inspire me. They always have, they always will. When I looked at papers for this process, one of the things I found was an article in 1994. I was recognized by the Urban Spectrum. And the quote I said there is just as true today. It's the same passion that Tim brings, which is we must each be responsible to ensure that at least one young person is successful. If each of us in this room does that, then we will all succeed and we can all be the inspiration. Latina's First Foundation says, girls can be what they can see. I've lived my life to be that person so that other girls, other Latinas, other people can also be something beyond what they thought was ever possible.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Rochelle Galindo.
Well, as I stated in my introduction, President Obama was the one to actually get me involved in politics. I think that his grace and poise in the face of all the adversity he faced was an inspiration when I faced all of the adversity that I did. And my favorite president in history is Teddy Roosevelt. And I think I've taken a little to heart his famous quote, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." And also, I will be corny for a second and say that Serena Gonzales-Gutierrez, in inspired me to run for this seat because I served with her in the legislature. We sat right next to each other on the House floor, and I know my values align with hers, and I know I will be the best person to carry her legacy and be a great replacement for her in representing HD4 values.
Thank you, Rochelle. Next or last to answer this question is Tim Hernandez. Yes, tell us one or two leaders who inspire you.
It is the 60th. I'll start. It is the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. Today is also the 52nd commemoration of a Chicano martyr of the Colorado movement named Ricardo Falcón. If you know who he is, Ricardo Falcón was a local community organizer born in Fort Lupton who went to college at CU and later studied law as a graduate student. And in 1968, there were 1966, there were 6 Chicano students on CU's campus. Through Ricardo Falcón building the Educational Opportunity Program, by the time he passed away and was assassinated in 1972, there were 1,400 on the college campus. I'm inspired by leaders who build tables not just for themselves, leaders who are unsatisfied by being the only Black or brown person in a room, who believe that we all belong in a room, oppressed people belong in a room, that poor people belong in a room, that women belong in a room, that trans folks belong in a room. I'm inspired by leaders like that. And I'm also inspired by the folks who lead on our day-to-day issues in our community like Cecilia. I'm inspired by leaders like Craig, who works for DHA and lives in a DHA place and helped get the Decatur Fresh Market, a fresh market in the middle of a food desert in Sun Valley, off the ground. I'm inspired by leaders on criminal justice in this room, folks like Rebecca Wallace and Denise Myers and Elizabeth Epps up there, who are leading the fight to make our community safer. I'm inspired by leaders in education like Ed Ogden, a longtime CEA member, Helena Vigil, Antonio Vigil, who work in our schools right now. And yes, more than anything, I'm inspired by our young people. The change that we must work for, the change we must build has to be intergenerational. We must involve our children with the active issues in our community. Otherwise, why would we be surprised when the issues show up for them as adults and they don't do anything? So I'm inspired by students like Nayeli, Preeti, Edgar, Veneno, and students that took their personal time who couldn't vote even if this was an election to lead on their community right now.
Thank you, candidates. And this is the now bonus question. I'm gonna ask the audience maybe for a little participation, and the councilwomen can help out maybe. House District 4 is made up of what? What's the regional? The north side and the west side. That's right. That's right. We forget sometimes. House District 4 is the north and the west side. And when I talk to people about House District 4, it is very different when you cross Colfax. It's very different. And growing up in the north side, I know how different this place looks now, but I'm still proud of it. And I still have tons of love for the community that has raised me. So with that said, candidates, we're going to start at the top that we started at the beginning, which is starting with Rochelle, Tim, and then Cecilia. The question, this is the most important question, by the way. What's so north side and what's so west side? All right. All right. We're going to start with Rochelle Galindo. All right. All right.
I will say Serena's so north side. Westwood is so west side.
Awesome. We'll go to Tim. This could be short.
I got 2 minutes because I love. I'll start, Mike. You can start the time. What's so north side is me. I'm from here. You feel me? 38th and Irving, baby. You feel me? I'm looking at my aunt who's a voting member today. I love you, Etienne. Proud Puro North Side here. But let me walk you through. I got a lot of love for the North and West Side. So actually, the way I'm going to build it is I want to actually walk you through some of the things I love in our community. If I had one ideal day in the North Side and West Side, right? I'd wake up and I'd go and get a number 29 avocado burrito with hot chile with chorizo at Javier's Diner. If you know Javier's Diner, I worked there in high school. Right? It's a small business in our community that thrives on green chile. Then I would go buy a book from West Side Books on 32nd. It's the best used bookstore. You could get a Rodolfo Anaya original copy for $5 in there, right? It's another small business that thrives in our community. I would stop by the Decatur Fresh Market to get a fresh snack because they have free snacks for kids and they have amazing community self-sufficiency that exists there. And then I would take my book and my snack and I'd go to Paco Sanchez Park, the Rude Recreation Center, and go sit in our green spaces that I love. From there, I'd be hungry again because I get hungry, all right? So I would go to Grandpa's Burger Haven on Feds if you love Grandpa's Burger Haven, because here's the best. You can sit at that blue bench right on Federal and watch the lowriders cruise by on Sundays. You feel me? And I love our community's cultural resiliency, and I would end the day at Revision. In case you have not been, Revision is doing some of the Echo and Westwood, some of the best cultural community organizing, I would say, in the state. I went to an event last week called Saigon Azteca, which was a fusion Latino Asian night market, and it was wonderful. I love, and what is so North Side and so West Side about our communities is cultural pride. We are proud of where we come from, whether it's at Revision or whether it's lowriders on Federal. We are deeply, deeply committed to making sure that we are enshrining community care, like at the Decatur Fresh Market, where folks from DHA don't just live there, they work at the market. And what I love and what is so North Side and so West Side is our opportunities. We have the opportunity for small businesses to thrive, for green spaces to be publicly accessible, and even, some of the best views in the city, in my opinion.
Wrap it up.
I'm going to start with parks, Inspiration Point, Sloan's Lake, Paco Sanchez. In Barnum, we have Barnum West, and talk about the best views in the city. We have them all. Now that there's been redistricting, we have the Elks Club. We have lots of other organizations in this community that are being represented. We've obtained Jefferson Park, 2 great coffee shops there. The new bakery on the corner of 29th and Federal. And we have the West Side. Buku West now has gift certificates. You can go and buy one and support all of the neighborhood businesses in Westwood and the West Side. The West Side is growing. It has our president of the city council, Jamie Torres. The North Side has our pro tem president of the city council, Amanda Sandoval. We are lucky because we have leaders, we have community, and we have a spirit of both the North and the West Side. What I see is that we have an obligation to make sure that everybody is represented. I live right in the middle, basically. Sloan's Lake is sort of on the edge between the North Side and the West Side. And so I've had the benefit and the real luxury of being able to see all of that community work. But it's the small businesses, it's the minority communities that exist, and it's also the newcomers. Sometimes we forget about it. You've got development all over Colfax, and sometimes they feel left out because they're not part of the North Side or the West Side history. So what we have is a challenge to ensure that they're welcome, that they live in habitable, affordable housing, and that we teach them about the values of this community. That is that we are a neighborhood, we are neighborhoods, we have neighborhood organizations that are vibrant, and we want you to be involved everywhere, every time. That's what's great about the North Side and the West Side. We're unique. We're HD4. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So now we are moving on to our questions from the audience. We will take 2 from the audience live here. You have to be a PO voting member. You must introduce yourself and include which precinct you are PO from. And then we have 1 question on Zoom. So we'll start here in the audience, and James will get to you. So we have one right.
Here we go. Michael.
Hi, my name is Michael Jerome, and I'm PO from 431. The question for you 3 is, in reference to why HD4 voted for Serena Gonzales-Gutierrez to represent us in the Colorado State House. We, knowing that Serena brought the ideal of the Chicano movement with a very strong focus on diversity and bringing unity into our district. The question is, what experience do each of you bring of the Chicano movement in our district with the emphasis on uniting the diversity in our district? Thus, honoring and will give reverence to the one of you filling our state representative, Serena Gonzales-Gutierrez, seat, continuing the leadership Serena has given us.
First.
We will start with Tim. It'll go Tim, Cecilia, and Rochelle.
We got 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
30 seconds. 30 seconds for the Chicano movement? Come on, guy. I'm gonna go ahead. I want to start. I identify as a Chicano from this neighborhood. I live the Chicano movement every day, right? The Chicano movement, people often relegate to the relics of the past, right? It was a West High School blowout in 1969. It was 2 weeks later, Lupe Briseño at the Kiriyama Carnation plant in Brighton. It was 2 weeks later at the development of the Plan Espiritual de Aztlán, which is integral to the way that we work in our community. But the Chicano movement is not something that died, it evolved. Its ideas live in all of us, in our students, in our teachers. And I live the Chicano movement every single day of our neighborhood because I'm a puro Chicano from the north side. You feel me? I don't got a lowrider that I could drive on feds because I'm poor, right? I'm a teacher. I pay over 50% of my income as a college-educated individual to pay rent in this neighborhood. According to Housing and Urban Development, I am housing burdened. And that means that I'm closer to homelessness than I will ever be to being a millionaire. Part of the Chicano movement and its integral was in unifying diverse groups, was in not just unifying with brown folks and Mexicanos or Mexican Americans, but with the American Indian movement and indigenous folks like the American Indian Academy that is in HD4, like things like the Indian Health Services Center that is in Sun Valley, making sure that we are building solidarity with folks who live the experience every day, right? And I understand that our neighborhood has adapted and changed in ways that are fundamentally different than when the Chicano movement blossomed here. Thank you. But I think that part of the new Chicano movement, part of what we have to be dedicated to is letting our young people lead it. We have to let our young people at North High School, at West High School, who also walked out very recently, who are dedicated to the Chicano movement in the same ways, but it wasn't just brown students. It was Black students and white students who had lived in the neighborhood for 3 months. It was all of us, and the Chicano movement's essence is that it does take all of us to provide social change.
Thank you. Next, we have Cecilia Espinosa.
Thank you for that question, Robert. One thing I would say is I'm not from the North Side. I'm not from that Chicano movement, but I am a Mexican American, a Hispanic, a Latina. I am the some parts of my diversity, which has changed, just like our pronouns change today. As communities evolve and develop, we take different terminology. But Tim's right. At the heart of the Chicano movement was the ability to make progress, to search for, again, going back to the March of Washington, economic justice, jobs, equality, housing for all. I'm not a Chicano or Chicana. I'm not a Chicana. But I raised one. I have a son who doesn't live in the North Side, but he considers himself a Chicano. And I think it's important to understand that we take identities from whatever backgrounds we have. And the question is, how do we implement the change that allows every kid to survive? There would have been no Chicano movement without the farm worker movement. So even though I'm not a Chicana, my parents were farm workers. We boycotted grapes, didn't drink Coors. We were part of that movement, even though we were a state away. It was amazing when we finally got to eat grapes because our cousins who were in California said, please stop boycotting. We want to get paid for the work that we're doing. But this is, I'm touched by it. I believe in it. I understand it, but I've exercised it in my life in many different ways. But fundamentally, it's about change And it's about inclusion. So the question becomes, inclusion to what? Tim talked about the tables. I've always built the table because whenever I've walked into a room or an organization that I didn't belong, when I left, there were at least 2 people that looked like me that were sitting there. That's the Chicano movement. That's the hope. That's a history. And that's what our future students will take. That's what my future students did when I was a law professor. And that's what I hope everybody else does today.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Rochelle Galindo.
I will say that I'm a proud Chicana, and the Chicano movement is a struggle that I live every day. Growing up in Greeley, I heard stories about signs being in grocery store windows saying no dogs, no Mexicans. And that's the prejudice and the racism I fought against every single day of my life. And every day I was an elected official there. And I paved the way for future generations so that they don't have to struggle as much as I did. And my skin is brown. And so, yeah, it's a struggle that I live every single day. And I feel that coming to HD4 and the West Side, it felt like a homecoming for the contributions I made to the Chicano movement in Northern Colorado. I like to joke that you're North Side, I far North Side.
Good afternoon. I'm Miss Vigil. I'm a teacher at formerly Strive Prep Sunnyside, now Rocky Mountain Prep Sunnyside. On the subject of gentrification of our neighborhoods, the result of that now is low school enrollment. But worse, the criminalization of our Black and brown scholars, where schools prefer punishment over belief and academic support and rigor. How can we effectively prevent gentrification from negatively impacting our schools and their surrounding most vulnerable communities?
Thank you. And we will start with Cecilia. It'll be Cecilia, Rochelle, and then Tim.
This is one of the issues that was most prevalent when I was talking to the precinct organizers, because as you know, most of the schools on the West Side were targeted for closure last year. Despite the fact that DHA has built housing for multiple families to live in Sun Valley, they closed Fairview. These are tragic issues. And it's even more tragic for Fairview in particular, because that is a community that is surrounded by federal I-70 or Colfax, which is the big viaduct, and then 6th Avenue. So they are an island. We need to do things in the educational process that ensure that all children have access to affordable and accessible schools. If we do that, we also have to ensure that those teachers in those schools are like yourself, caring about each one of those students and being the example to them. When our students don't have teachers that look like them, then they don't have people who can actually fight for them, who can ensure that they're not the subject and target of discrimination, who can ensure, because you've succeeded, that they can succeed, and you're not going to teach to a floor, you're going to teach to a ceiling. Our standards and our testing became the height. That's what we're supposed to do now in a public education. It's wrong. So what we have to do is give every child hope. And the problem is many of our children don't have hope. I wrote an article about dreamers many years ago. And part of that article was talking about how many people, because the DREAM Act would not get passed, would drop out of school because they didn't see any future. And I talked about the fact that Congress needed to act. These are the places where what we do in schools affect how kids believe in themselves and what they can do. So I think what we need to do is first give support to our parents, second give support to our teachers. Maybe both of those are the same. It's hard but the parents need to know who the good teachers are and who they can send their kids to that they can trust. And then to our students, all three are important as a three-legged stool. All of that will make a difference in terms of turning around our education system.
Thank you. Next up is Rochelle.
Yeah, in my short time living on Hooker Street in the Sloan's Lake area, there is a house on the corner of there's a house sitting on the corner of the street that housed a family that had been there for generations, and they held strong for years against corporate developers trying to purchase their property and develop some of the and gentrify that plot of land. And they held strong for years, and I remember being so proud of them and watching seeing their townhouse on the edge of the street, which was a part of the history of the neighborhood. And fighting against gentrification and displacement was part of the work I did on the Greeley City Council as the City Council liaison for the Downtown Development Authority. And yes, I mean, those are displacement and land use issues are definitely more controlled by the local government. So I look forward to partnering with our new council member to figure out how to ensure that we're fighting against gentrification and including displacement protections in any policy that's passed.
Great. And then last, we will go with Tim.
And I think I missed part of that question, sorry. As a former educator, I know how important it is to fully fund our public school system and ensure that our teachers are paid appropriately so that they are educating our students to the best of their ability.
Thank you. Last person to answer this question is Tim Hernandez, and then we have a question online. There's one more question. There's three. This is still her question. Yes.
You know, I appreciate the question. Thank you, Mrs. V. I think you have a lot in your question, right? And it's because our community has been through a lot in the last 20 years. We were told that if we increase the housing stock, as long as we increase the housing stock, rents will go down, and it didn't. Right. And that's why we've experienced the most displacement out of anybody in the country when it comes to Latino people. The north side of Denver that we're sitting in right now is the most gentrified Latino neighborhood in the country. That's why a question like gentrification matters. More brown folks who look like us have been pushed out of this neighborhood than anywhere else. New York, LA, Chicago, Detroit, anywhere. And so the question about how it impacts schools is real. And I know because I was a teacher at North High School. And I taught at North High School. And 70% of the students at North High School are Latino students in the most gentrified Latino neighborhood in the country. And do you know what that says? That says that even when our families cannot afford to live in the neighborhood anymore, we will still drive from Aurora, from Thornton, from Arvada, from Westminster to take our kids to the schools that we trust, the institutions that have worked and provided freedom for our community. And it's important. You asked also about corporatized mergers. You're a teacher at Stripe Sunnyside, which was just taken over by Rocky Mountain Prep, right? And so again, corporatized mergers, in case you don't know, folks, corporatized charters work like chain businesses. That's their exact opportunistic approach to education. They only exist to go one direction and eventually absorb each other so that there is not a stable public education system that enrolls students. That is why folks like Fairview Elementary closed. That's why more of the 14 schools recommended for closure by DPS, 14 of them, majority of them were in the west side of Denver. And it's important to remember that you also asked about how kids are treated in schools. I know exactly how they're treated in schools. Our schools often treat our young people like criminals instead of students. where schools feel more like prisons than they do as a place of learning. We need to invest in mental health, invest in counselors instead of armed response. We need to end solitary confinement for young people under the age of 18.
Wrap it up. Thank you. Oh, okay. All right, so we will now go to the online question, and that order will be Rochelle, Tim, and then Cecilia. Starting with Rochelle. So here's the question, and this is proposed by Chala Garcia Orlando, precinct PO in precinct 433. What would be your priorities to support families and specifically parents if you were elected to the legislature? And we will start with Rochelle.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes. What would be your priorities to support families and specifically parents if you were elected to the legislature?
I will continue my leadership based on accessibility and transparency, making myself accessible to the families here in HD4. And like I said, I'm a former educator. I will continue to ensure that education is not the first thing that's cut in the budget, and fight to ensure that we are fully funding our public education system.
Great. Thank you. And please, candidates, let me know if you need me to repeat the question. Yes. Okay, what would be your priorities to support families and specifically parents if you were elected to the legislature? Tim, you are up next.
Shout out to our parents. We got any parents in here? Yeah, all right. Shout out. Look, I want to ground really quickly in a story. Because I know what parents are experiencing in our community, because I said I was a teacher at North High School, but actually I started teaching at North High School during the pandemic. And I watched my students struggle with housing that their family couldn't afford. I had kids quite literally do my virtual class from a bathtub because their family lost their housing. I know what parents are experiencing because I watched a 15-year-old student who was a sophomore in high school become the primary breadwinner of their household during the pandemic because their parents lost their jobs. A child saving their money to pay for their entire family's housing. Parents are struggling because of systems like property taxes, right? Yes, everybody felt the pain and groan of property taxes this year. And the reason why we feel it for parents, especially parents in single family homes, is because in Colorado, we're 47th in the country for property taxes. We don't charge as much as other states, but the reason why it falls on single family homes is because the rich don't pay their fair share. Rich people do not pay equitable taxes on their $30 million homes in Aspen. And so folks in the North and West Side, parents are forced to ask their kids to go to work to provide for their housing. There's a really important way we have to ground in how it actually shows up for our community. The rent is too damn high for folks that don't even live in housing like me. And I'm not a parent. Imagine if I had kids and I couldn't afford the rent because there was no opportunity and local municipalities did not have the tools to be able to stabilize their own rents for parents like me. Imagine if I was facing eviction for an unjust reason and I had no protection from the state legislature. Imagine if I was a parent that then was evicted and I didn't have the money for a lawyer because there was not enough eviction defense funds. There are important ways we have to support families and parents and students, and all of them are rooted in root causes that will lift all of our community. Things like housing policy that is inclusionary and making sure that we can keep people in their homes.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Tim. Cecilia, would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure, that'd be great. Thanks.
What would be your priorities to support families and specifically parents if you were elected to the legislature?
I'm also going to start with a story. I'm going to start with the story of working the Dragon Boat Festival for the Colorado Democratic Party. And what we did this year is we've had 9 jars, and we gave every person that walked by 3 votes that they could put into those 9 jars for issues and priorities. We asked children to vote. And what children's #1 priority is? Gun violence. What we have to do today is support parents who are afraid to send their children to school, who have to evaluate, all of us have to evaluate whether we come to an event like this, whether we're in an event that's in the open air, whether we go to public markets anymore. We're not safe in our shopping centers. We're not safe in our schools. So for parents, I look at them and I am so grateful that my son has grown, because I can't imagine the pressure and the difficulties that they feel. We have to stand up and ensure that parents have support to know that their kids will be safe. That's the first issue. The second issue is pre-K accountability. Our governor, who wanted pre-K education, just recently said pre-K education was just a way for people to get childcare. That is wrong. As an educator, as a legislator, it would be my job to ensure that we hold the system accountable and look at who is getting that access to pre-K education and who wasn't. And how do we make it equitable? How do we ensure that every child that needs pre-K gets pre-K? And then the next thing that I would do to help parents, because it'll help every one of us, is work with whoever I can find to eliminate Tabor, right? We can't fund education. We can't fund equalization of taxes. None of that is possible as long as we have Tabor tying us down and keeping us from effectively working. This will help parents, and it will help every single person in this room and in this House district. Thank you.
Thank you to our candidates today. That concludes the round of questions that we had, from both prepared and in the audience. So now we're going to move to the wrap-up phase of this forum. So thank you for staying in here for the long haul. You will each have 1 minute for your wrap-up, and keep going in the sequence of order. So this order, because we started back up at the top again. So this will now be Tim, Cecilia, and then Rochelle, and you each have 1 minute for your wrap up. So we will begin with Tim.
Like I said, my name is Tim Hernandez. I'm a teacher. I'm a Chicano, and I'm a North Sider from here. I know what gun violence is like because I sit with kids who are afraid to die in a classroom. Yeah, we need to take it on head on. We need to take our housing crisis head on for families and parents. We need to take on the issue of what is showing up in our schools, not just because of funding, but because, in case you don't know, we're in the middle of a teacher shortage where teachers aren't just leaving their schools, they are leaving the profession entirely. We need to make sure that what we are building is conducive to the next generation to lead on our democratic values from a place of lived experience. Those who are most impacted are the best equipped to lead the fight for change. I know because of my students, I know because of my colleagues, I know because of the community members I've known, I know because of my aunt who's in the crowd today, that if we listen to each other, we can fight for change and we can win.
Next, we will hear from Cecilia Espinosa. Yeah.
My husband and I met here in 1981, leading a summer youth camp in HD4, teaching about poverty, social justice, and change. We took the students to a farm labor camp near Longmont. Michael found me in a trailer there. He looked at me and saw tears in my eyes and asked what was wrong. I was looking at those children and I knew that I had seen myself, but for the fact that my parents made a choice to move out of the beet farms. I knew I was fortunate because I was a law professor on a break, summer break. But I saw the children, in those children myself, and I knew I had a responsibility to them. And I'm asking to let me take that same responsibility to the State House to represent you in HD4. I will do everything I can to pass bills that will make a real difference for us, eliminating gun violence, providing adequate, attainable, safe housing, access to healthcare and mental health services, and quality education. I am Cecilia Espinosa. Please vote for me.
And last is Rochelle Galindo.
My name is Rochelle Galindo, and I am the only candidate up here with the most diverse lived experience as a queer disabled woman of color. And I'm the only one that has the experience to be the most effective progressive legislator for HD4 on day one. A vote for me is a vote to stand up against corporate lobbyists, and it's a vote to stand up against oil and gas and corporate landlords. So vote for me because I have the backbone and the experience to be the most effective legislator for HD4.
All right. Well, give it one more round of applause for these amazing candidates for going through this forum. Right. I am now going to thank you everyone for being here for this. That concludes the forum portion of the vacancy. And now we will be turning it over to James for the rest.
Real quick, I know we're over time, so I want to be fast. So the Democratic Party of Denver, here's the money part, is covering the costs of this event. Costs a lot of money to rent this venue, this room. And this is not something we planned for. This is not in our budget. So this is a very expensive event that we are required to host that we hadn't planned for. So I would love if each of you can make a contribution. We have two folks passing out envelopes. You can put your credit card numbers on there. You can write a check and insert it. Make sure you fill those out. They will be collecting those in buckets. We will get those back. I really hope you can pitch in even a little bit. The cost of this room was about $1,500. So far, we're halfway there. Please help us reach the goal, close the costs, and at least help us break even on this. Cash too, yes. Thank you very much. And then what will happen is after you do that, take a break. And Emma, how long is our break? 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. I'm going to time it because we're running over. If you're a precinct organizer or a voting member of the vacancy, please come into the rows that say reserved. They're the first 4 rows in the middle here. Okay. 5 minutes. All right, I now call the Vacancy Committee of the Democratic Party of Colorado's 4th House District to order. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your commitment to the Democratic Party by serving as precinct organizers, by being here today to watch our process. Thank you to the candidates for stepping up to serve our community in this way. As I said earlier, my name is Emma Bleesner. I am the chair of House District 4. I was born and raised in the North Side on 30th and Irving, and I now have the privilege of owning a home in our community at 38th and Irving. It is my honor to be here with you all today to help us facilitate the election of our next House District 4 representative. We are here to fill a vacancy seat due to the election of Councilwoman Serena Gonazales-Gutierrez to Denver City Council. We have a duty to the voters of our community to complete this process as transparently and collaboratively as possible. So I'm going to start by running through the flow of today's meeting to give everyone a sense of what will happen if you've never been to a vacancy meeting before. I will begin with the introduction of officers, background and planning that took place leading up to the forum today. And then we will establish a quorum, run through the rules of the meeting and process of nominations, followed by nominations for House District 4 representative, which will then be followed by the vote, which will be conducted virtually. So just so everyone knows, this is super, super important. We may have to conduct multiple rounds of voting if no candidate receives 50% plus 1 in the first round. So I know it's Saturday. I know it's really nice outside. You might have other places you want to be, but please do not leave after you submit your vote. We may have to come back together. The Credentials Committee needs time to tabulate the vote. We are running a whole election here. We want them to do it right. And we may need to vote again. If we do not have quorum, if we cannot complete our duties today, Governor Polis elects the person to this seat. Makes an undemocratic or interesting process even less democratic. And I know none of us want that, right? Or probably none of us want that. I don't know, but please do not leave. Okay. So first, introducing my fellow officers. You heard about them before from James. We have our Vice Chair, Michael Sheehan, up here with the wonderful lights. Hey. And we have Scott Mangino behind the camera. He did everything tech for this meeting. He really deserves a huge round of applause. He's done so much work. I could not have done this without Scott, so I'm really, really grateful. And then we have been supported by the incredible leadership of James Reyes, and then with help from Leah Dean and our other county officers. I'm so glad that we're finally here today at the vacancy. I'm gonna drink after this. I'm gonna relax. It has been a lot, y'all, to get here. You can come buy me a margarita. I will take that. Thank you. There has been so much work and passion and dedication from everyone to get us here. So for the officers, we began discussing the flow of this meeting and what would be needed quite some time ago. We worked to compile educational emails with infographics on how the process works. We informed the press. We created a registration system, secured this location. I called every single voting member to answer questions and make sure you would be here today. And we created this forum. So at every step of the way, we had multiple individuals involved. We asked for feedback from the HD4 officers, broader leadership to ensure we could get this right. We worked to communicate transparency and efficiently with voting members to get us here today. So like James said, we hope this can serve as a model of how we do this process should others occur in Denver. So before conducting any business, we are required to establish a quorum, which is our legislative charge to make sure we have enough people here to do the work that we need to do. So I have to refer to myself in the third person sometimes, so just bear with me on that one. So the chair will now recognize Mary Geisinger, chair of the Credentials Committee, for the credentials report. It's on.
Well, I am super impressed. State law requires that you have 50% of voting members registered. You have far exceeded that. You are at about 95%. So it's my pleasure to say that you have met quorum.
You want?
We should always be at 95%.
True. Amazing. Thank you, Mary. So I will now run through the rules of this meeting, kind of going over Robert's Rules of Order. That's how we have to conduct the process. Then I will follow and talk about how nominations will work and the process of the vote. So as with all Democratic Party meetings, we're governed by Robert's Rules of Order. In order to speak, you must be recognized by the chair. Voting members may make a motion, and all motions require a second and a vote. So if you do decide to speak at any point or make a motion or ask a question, please raise your hand and someone, James probably, will bring you a microphone. Before you speak, please tell us your name and your precinct because we need that for the official minutes and for the record of this meeting. All right. So when we reach nominations, we will announce the candidates who have already declared. We will select our order from our trustee hat over here, and then we will begin with the nominations of declared candidates. Candidates will be allotted 4 minutes total. By party rules, candidates who are voting members of the vacancy can nominate themselves or have another voting member nominate them. Candidates who are not voting members must have a voting member nominate them. Nominations do not require a second for this part of the procedure, but candidates can have one if they would like. Nominators, seconders, or any other speakers will count towards the candidates allotted 4 minutes. We will have our trustee countdown light in the front again, set for 4 minutes. When we will pause the clock between each speaker because I have to recognize each person before they speak. Once we close nominations, we will move to the vote. We will put a QR code on the screen for our individuals in the room, and we will drop a link in the chat for the folks on Zoom. The Zoom is only for voting members, so only voting members will receive that link. We will allow 5 minutes for voting. Based on y'all getting back to your seats in the last 5 minutes, don't leave. Stay in your seat. We want to keep the process moving, and then the vote will be closed. If you need help with the form or any technology, please raise your hand, and either Scott or James, Leah, or myself will assist you with the QR code. If you are online and you need help, please drop your phone number in the chat, and one of us will give you a call. Once voting is closed, the Credentials Committee will tabulate the vote. Like I said before, we need to wait and be patient and not leave. We want to give them time to get this right, And we need to make sure we're here in case we need to vote again, should no candidate receive 50% plus one in the initial ballot. If that is going to happen, if no candidate receives 50% plus one on that first ballot, the candidate receiving the lowest amount of votes would be dropped. We would move into next round with the other candidates. Before we move on to our actual nominations, I do want to just pause and see if there are any questions about what I just went over. I will look at the chat. Okay. Oh yeah, hold on. Follow the process. So remember, when you get the mic, please say your name and the precinct that you are a part of. I don't think it's on.
Michael Sheehan. I'm the Vice Chair of House District 4. With regard to the 4 minutes, I will notify prior to the candidate speaking how much time they actually have allotted, if that's acceptable to the rest of the group.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Any other questions? Oh, there was one question on Zoom. The question says, how do we vote? And then asked if it was cutting out. So if I'm cutting out and you're on Zoom, someone else drop that in the chat. I can, yeah. So voting will be done via Google form. Like I said, if you are in the room, there will be a QR code to scan on the screen. We tested it even from the back row, it works. If you're online, we will drop a link in the chat. Just a standard Google form. Looks like Scott wants to tell me something. The chair recognizes you.
Thanks.
That's not on.
If you're not on the committee, don't scan the QR code. Like, it's kind of a violation of law. So just don't do it, because it's going to make this last longer to validate. So please, if you're not a vacancy committee member, do not vote.
Yes, the credentials committee will have to review all of the Google forms that are filled in and check them with the credentialed voting members. So if people fill it out who are not, that's going to make them take a lot more time. So do not do that, and you're breaking the law. Okay. So seeing no further discussion or questions, we will now move to nominations. At this time, the chair has received 3 notices of intent to run for House District 4 from Cecilia Espinoza, Tim Hernandez, and Rochelle Galindo. To determine the order of nominations, Scott is going to pull names out of the hat again. I put them back in, yeah. Okay. Oh, first will be Tim Hernandez. Second will be Rochelle Galindo. And third will be Cecilia Espinoza. Okay. So if you are speaking on behalf of Tim, if you could please come down here. What happened to the mic? Thank you. So the chair recognizes our very own state senator, Julie Gonzalez, to nominate Tim Hernandez. No. Just one press.
Test.
Hello? Okay. Okay, I was like, wait, what?
Excellent. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Julie Gonzalez, and respectfully and gratefully and excitedly, I submit the nomination of Tim Hernandez to fill the vacancy of House District 4. I believe in intergenerational leadership. I believe that we should be working to ensure that we have folks who are working alongside a breadth and depth of community. I believe that we should have more renters representing us in the Colorado legislature. I believe that Tim has demonstrated his willingness to ensure that we all live up to our democratic values. What a joy and an honor to submit his nomination this afternoon.
Okay, the chair will now recognize Ana Hernandez to second the nomination.
My name is Ana Hernandez. Our family has lived in the North Side community for over 30 years. We love Tim. And I second the nomination.
All right. Thank you both so much. Tim Hernandez has been officially nominated and how much time does he have left?
Still not enough
The
time.
candidate has 2 minutes and 57 seconds. Go ahead.
I promise I won't take the whole 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Is that fair? Yeah, we okay with that? My name is Tim Hernandez. I'm a teacher. I'm a Chicano. And I'm a North Sider. I'm from right here on the map, on 38th and Irving. I grew up in this neighborhood. I know what our struggles are. But the struggle that we're faced with today is a unique one. I don't know the last time we've had a vacancy in HD4, to be honest with you. But our job here is to fulfill a vacancy. It is not to pick the best candidate. That was decided by the voters when they elected Serena Gonazales-Gutierrez to be our House District Representative. And they voted for Serena for 2 reasons. One, because she's somebody from the neighborhood who knows the neighborhood like the back of her hand and can speak to our issues because she has lived them. And the second is because she is a progressive champion. Thank you for your work fighting for us. Homies, earlier today, I was mentioning renter protections. The very few renter protections renters like me do have is because of the woman sitting in that chair right there. We need not just somebody from this neighborhood who knows our place, who knows our history, who knows our issues, but more importantly, somebody who is going to fight for them, who can win on our issues, who can build collaborative tables, who can work and pass legislation that improves the lives of students and families and workers and women and Black folks and brown folks and people of color and indigenous people as well. Look, I'm running because this is personal for me. And I want to make sure I take a quick second and say thank you so much, Cecilia, for your hard work. Wonderful job in building our capacity. Thank you, Rochelle, for running as well. Our community is stronger with all of us running. A diverse race seems tense, homies. It is tense because we are trying to figure out the future of our neighborhood. What policies do we want? What issues are we going to champion? And who are we going to ask to lead us? But I want to ground us in one thing. That if I win, and I'll humbly ask for your vote to do so, I will only be one representative, one person in a position of power, one leader. But I know fundamentally from my work in community, from my work in grassroots organizing, from my work in classrooms, that it's gonna take all of us. Regardless of who you vote for today, it's gonna take all of us. And so after we get done with this process, I'm really excited about diving in, hearing from what our issues, hearing from folks that are impacted in ways I don't understand, and making sure that we can build a better HD4, we can build a stronger North Side, we can build a stronger West Side for everybody who grows up in this neighborhood and everybody who has the opportunity to age in it as well. Thank you. I humbly, honorably, I ask for your vote. My name is Tim Hernandez, and thank you so much for your time. Si se puede, viva la raza. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will now move on to nominations for Rochelle Galindo, and the chair recognizes Rochelle Galindo to nominate herself.
Thank you, Emma. My name is Rochelle Galindo and I use she, her pronouns. And I am nominating myself for the HD4 vacancy, and I will hand it over to Director Xochitl Gaitan as my seconder.
Okay, thank you. The chair recognizes DPS Director Gaitan to second the nomination.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Xochitl Gaitan, President of the DPS Board of Education. You cannot go wrong with any one of these candidates. However, if you want ideal representation, that is Rochelle Galindo. She is the only candidate with legislative experience as a city council person and former state representative. I was not born in this country and had the undocumented experience until the age of 21 when I became a naturalized citizen. That experience was the one of fear, poverty, and desperation. In my childhood and teen years, I lived on the north side, and the rest of my life on the west side. The importance of representation for my Mexican immigrant community and other immigrant communities is lacking in the state legislature. We need someone like Rochelle, who has proven during her time as a former state representative that she is a champion for the plight of our immigrant communities. As a member of the LGBTQ community, a proud Latina, a community and labor organizer, she brings a deep and diverse lens through which she will legislate on our behalf. Bold, yet collaborative. Marginalized, yet courageous. Vote Rochelle Galindo.
Thank you. Rochelle Galindo has been properly nominated. We will now hear from Rochelle Galindo, and she has how much time left? 2 minutes and 10 seconds remain.
Can you hear me? Okay, awesome. In January of this year, 2 days before my 33rd birthday, I almost died. I was at the gym and suddenly got winded and sat down to take a break, and then I fell onto the floor and I realized my left leg and arm weren't working right. So I just laid there. And a guy that was watching my struggle offered to call 911, and I told him no because I didn't have insurance at the time. I'm glad that he did because it saved my life. The next thing I remember was an EMT reaching out his hand to me with a blue latex glove on, and I grabbed it and he helped me onto the stretcher. The ER confirmed I was having a stroke, and the rest of that day is a blur. They put me in the flight for life, and I'm mad I don't remember it because it's the only time I've ever been on a helicopter. At Anschutz, they took part of my skull out to save my life, which is why I'm wearing this very stylish helmet right now. I've been doing rehab ever since, and I've come a long way. My care team is very supportive of me running, but you already knew that I was strong enough to lead because I knocked your door. This isn't the first struggle I've faced. Growing up a working class gay woman of color in Greeley, struggle is something I know well. I've had to relearn a lot of things as part of this healing journey, like how to eat, walk, and talk. But I didn't have to relearn my values because those never changed. My values are Denver values, social, economic, immigrant, and climate justice. And that's why they tried to recall me, and that's why I came here 4 years ago. You know who would really hate it if I win today? Corporate lobbyists, oil and gas, big landlords, those that benefit the most in this broken system that we have, because they know I will continue to rattle the systems of oppression they use to hold people down. I want to continue the work I started, and in this post-Roe world, with marriage equality up next, our leaders need to have the lived experience to protect our freedoms. From Westwood up here to Regis, I believe that we need a bold, progressive leader who has the experience to be effective on day one.
Thank you.
I ask for your vote if you think so too.
Thank you so much. We will now move on to nominations for Cecilia Espinosa.
Thank you.
You'll hear me?
Making sure, just making.
I got you. All right. The chair recognizes Adam Platt to nominate Cecilia Espinosa.
Hello, my name is Adam Platt, and I'm the immediate past captain of HD4A. I am proud to nominate my friend Cecilia Espinosa to be our next HD4 representative because experience matters. Cecilia is a trailblazer, the daughter of farm workers, first in her family to attend college and to become an attorney. She is a true progressive. She spent her legal career helping those who needed it most, starting as a migrant and immigration attorney and continuing until Clinton appointed her to the Board of Immigration Appeals before George W. Bush promptly fired her for being too liberal. Cecilia has experience and she knows how to get things done. We know that about her from her time as HD4B captain, but she also knows that there are no easy answers to the problems that we are facing today. And it takes someone who has been on both sides to understand that. That's Cecilia. Experience matters. She's been a tenant. She has been a landlord. She has been a parent and a teacher. She's been an attorney and a judge. She is progressive, but she's also pragmatic. And my hand is shaking so much, I don't know why. I have done this before. We in HD4 need someone in the State House who has the right ideals, genuinely cares about Coloradans of all stripes, and is someone who can get things done for all of us in HD4. Experience matters. That is why Cecilia has my vote, and that is why I nominated her to be our next HD4 representative. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. The chair will recognize the Honorable Adrian Benavides to second the nomination.
Thank you. It's my honor to second the nomination of Cecilia Espinosa. As a former legislator and a proud Chicana, I have lived in the North Side for more than 30 years, and that's where I met Cecilia in 1991. She was my neighbor. House District 4 has such a long history of being at the forefront of democratic values throughout the state. And if you want to continue that history, you should vote for Cecilia because she has the experience, but she has the heart to be the best representative for you.
Thank you so much. Cecilia Espinosa has been properly nominated. We will now hear from Cecilia, who has 1 minute and 49 seconds remain.
You guys did pretty good. I thought it'd be longer, shorter. Thank you, Adam and Adrian, and thank you, members of the Vacancy Committee. In meeting with so many of you face to face and telephone to telephone, I learned so much in this process. I'm committed, I'm dedicated, and I've committed my life over the last several years to you in HD4. When I left federal service, I jumped into Democratic Party politics. Having had your hands tied for all those years in federal government, it really felt good to have my chains off and be able to be politically involved. In that process, I led the Diversity and Inclusion Committee for the county party. I chaired the platform committee and served on it 4 times since that time. Always a very controversial issue, but it's a great platform. Look it up if you can. I've also worked very hard in this community in HD4 to build leadership. That's why we have Emma. We have Adrian, who's a former finance chair for 4B. We have, Leah. There are so many people in DPOD leadership that have come through HD4. And that's because I work intergenerationally. I look for any young person I can find. And as soon as I meet them, I say, where do you live? Some of you know that because I called you as precinct organizers and said, hey, I'm looking for somebody in your age group to step up. We need the future, but we also need someone to take the vacancy. Serena left us for a great cause, but she left us with a big need. I can fill that need now, today. I've written laws, I've read laws, I've adjudicated laws, and the job of a legislator is to do that work. Please let me do so. Please give me your vote. Thank you so much.
I'll take that. Thank you. Cecilia Espinosa has been properly nominated. Okay, at this time, the chair will now open nominations from the floor. It's part of the process. We have to do that. Are there any other? What? Okay, we have a motion to close nominations. Every motion requires a second. So the motion was made by Rosemary Rodriguez. What precinct are you? precinct 429, and I see Rita Simas second, 417. So that basically, we were going to open nominations from the floor. Someone moved to close those. Now we're about to vote on that. Okay. All in favor of closing nominations, say aye. Any opposed, no. Okay. All right. Well, the ayes have it. The nominations are closed. Okay. The humor is great. Love it here. All right. At this time, we will now open voting. Scott is just getting that prepped for us. We had a spot in case there was a nomination from the floor. So we are going to put that up in 30 seconds. Okay. James is going to sing. All right. So we are putting up the QR code now and dropping the link in the chat. It is 3:05. So at 3:10, we will close the vote. I will give you a 1-minute warning. Again, if something does not work and you are not able to scan the QR code, please raise your hand. If you are online, please put your phone number in the chat or your question, and we will help you out. Again, please don't leave after you vote unless you want Governor Polis to do this for us. Thank you. Five minutes to vote. James doesn't listen to me. Or read the 47 documents I put together. All right, I have, hello, am I on? I don't know, because no one's listening, so. Hello, I have the results. Okay. I will read the vote count totals in no specific order first. Cecilia Espinoza received 27 votes, Rochelle Galindo, 2 votes, and Tim Hernandez with 39 votes, receiving 57% of the vote. So with that, Tim Hernandez has been duly elected by this body to serve as the next representative. All right, so I think we probably all want to hear from our new representative, Tim Hernandez.
Hello, everybody. Let me, I want to say a very quick thank you to the voters, to the other candidates, to the community members, to the parents, to the students that this moment belongs to. I'm sick of struggle. I'm sick of poverty. I'm sick of kids not going to fully funded schools, and I'm sick of the kids that do go to underfunded schools being afraid to die in a classroom. And I want to name very quickly and do something very important in this moment, because it's not just mine. This moment belongs to those who struggle, who choose to struggle. And so what I'm going to ask to do is if at any point in your life you feel like you have struggled, you have been oppressed, whether you're Black, brown, Indigenous, if you're a woman, if you're LGBT+, if you're poor, I want you to raise your hand. This moment belongs to all of us. And everybody raising your hands, it's going to take all of us to uproot oppression. Homies, that's exactly how oppression works. It's not just one person. It's not just one identity. It impacts everybody. That is why people are raising their hands. And everybody else still raising their hands, it's going to take all of us to enact anti-oppressive policies. I'm 1% now of the state legislature in the state of Colorado. 1%, one vote. But I know that if we do this together, and if we let our young people lead the way, then we'll always be a little bit more free. I'm gonna close there. I'm gonna ask some of my students to come up because we're gonna do a practice that we do in our classroom and a practice that's been done here in the North and West Side for a very long time. I'm gonna ask everybody to clap with us. Thank you so much for your trust. Thank you for your hope. And thank you for trusting me to act, to end our issues. Thank you. First things first. Thank you so much, everybody. Y que le vaya bien. Viva la raza. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, we have to officially adjourn the meeting, so don't leave quite yet, please. Thank you. Congratulations, Representative-elect Tim Hernandez. Thank you so much to all the candidates for running. We have to follow Robert's Rules of Order, so really quickly, we just have to say, are there any announcements? There's an HD4 meeting the first Saturday of the month at Bar 38. It would be lovely to see all of you POs there. Also, now we need to adjourn. I need a motion to adjourn this meeting. Okay, motion to adjourn by Angie Padilla and what? Sorry? 422, seconded by Leah Payne Dean in precinct 421. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Any opposed? That would be weird, but go ahead. All right, thank you so much. I now adjourn this meeting.